Would you say that attending these events with other like-minded investors lifts you up and kind of gives you confidence to keep investing?
So I think it was never really the goal to have so many connections, but you just start attending people in this space who are putting out retreats that you follow on social media or putting out events. And it was really nice and almost kind of cathartic. Like, it's fun when we were messaging back and forth and you mentioned termites or
Yep.
plumbing leaks. And I'm like, funny you mentioned that. Now I have termites and plumbing leaks. And so we all just have the same set of problems. And I think it helps normalize it because a lot of my friends are not dealing with plumbing leaks or running to rental properties in the evening. And I'm enjoying myself and think it's fun because this is what I am passionate about and enjoy doing. But it's really hard when you don't have anyone to talk to locally. And so I think that's really how I got involved in these networks. And you actually make good friends through this.
Welcome to Your Landlord Resource podcast. Many moons ago, when I started as a landlord, I was as green as it gets. I may have had my real estate license, but I lacked confidence and the hands-on experience needed when it came to dealing with tenants, leases, maintenance, and bookkeeping. After many failed attempts, fast forward to today, Kevin and I have doubled our doors and created an organized, professionally operated rental property business. Want to go from overwhelmed to confident? If you're an ambitious landlord or maybe one in the making, join us as we provide strategies and teach actionable steps to help you reach your goals and the lifestyle you desire, all while building a streamlined and profitable rental property business. This is Your Landlord Resource podcast. Hi there, landlords, and thank you for tuning in to the Your Landlord Resource podcast. This is Stacy, and today I am going solo as your host. And Kevin's here, but working behind the scenes because today we are interviewing another investor and landlord who wanted to come on here and tell her story of all the ups and downs that she has experienced as a self-managing landlord. Sarah King is the founder of Sarah King Invests, a brand centered around showing people what it is really like investing in real estate and how it can be used to accelerate the journey to financial independence. Her roots started with Dave Ramsey, where she and her now ex-husband worked themselves out of $118,000 in debt. They acquired 5 properties and had a baby just to have her marriage and investment portfolio crumble shortly afterwards from the ex's drug addiction. Determined to provide stability, Sarah purchased her first house hack on her daughter's first birthday. She learned how to manage renovations, but the key to her success was in learning how to raise private capital. Since 2020, Sarah has acquired 16 units and has furnished 9 midterm rentals, all while working a full-time W-2 job. Sarah is highly educated and works in the field of genetics as a medical science liaison when she isn't landlording or hanging out with her daughter or her new husband. From plumbing problems to the network of friends and the team she's built up to help manage her rentals, Sarah thought she could save our listeners some time and money by discussing what she's learned. Without further ado, please welcome Sarah King. Well, hello. How are you? Welcome to Your Landlord Resource.
Hello, how are you? I'm doing good today.
I'm good. So we have followed you on Instagram since we first started, and I think that was September of 2020, so quite a while.
Nice.
And I believe you were Nerd's Guide to Fi back then. Is that correct?
I was, yes.
And you had a podcast of your own?
Yeah, so originally started with that, and then you have kids and you decide something has to go.
Yeah.
I started it kind of during the pandemic and then it kind of fizzled out in the end, but it was fun.
I don't think people really realize how much work it is to have a podcast. We didn't, but we're still going strong. We're in it a year now and we're doing really well. So we're happy about that. So
yeah, I learned a lot. It was hard for me to see the return of the time you're taking and the hours you spend. And then also I ended up like offloading it and getting an editor and all of that. And then it just costs so much money and it's hard to recoup that. And I'm like, I made it as passive as I could, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't I needed to get back to the houses, which is where I'm happiest.
No, I know it's a lot. It's definitely a time suck, and time is money. We've said that before. So, but I mean, we have watched your life change in so many ways since we first started following you, and you're pregnant now with your second child, right?
Yes. So I actually am like 18 days away from my due date. So like the
Okay,
clock is ticking.
Good. We got you in before all that.
I know.
So, oh my gosh.
So far, so good, everyone.
Yeah. And your daughter must be so excited.
She is so excited. I was the opposite. I was always like, please, mom and dad have no more children. And she's like wishing for a sibling for her birthday. So she's ecstatic.
That's great. Yeah. I'm the youngest of 4. So my siblings were like, okay, you're done now, right? No more. Let's give the listeners some background on your investment journey. When did you start and where are you now?
Yeah, so I started investing in real estate in about 2018. You guys saw everything behind the scenes, so I was actually married before. We started out on this Dave Ramsey journey, me and the ex-husband, and so back in 2018, we got really intense about paying off our debt, and I got super into financial independence, and I was definitely the money nerd in the relationship. And so after about a year of Dave Ramsey, I'm like, okay, we're on track to pay off our debt in under 2 years. Wow. What are we going to do now? Because we have about a 50% savings rate. And we started out with $118,000 in debt. And it was all like crappy debt too, like credit cards, mostly vehicles.
Kevin and I were in the same spot. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, I can't live like this. And for me, it was really hard because I went to college, I went to grad school, I kind of did all of these things, and you felt like you checked all the boxes. Then you get married and you have nice cars because you're a college graduate now, and of course, like you have a good job so you can make the car payment, and then you're just drowning in 100 little payments. Yeah. And I learned that was no way to live, and so a friend was like, hey, you should listen to Dave Ramsey.
That's great.
So used him, and then kind of got into like what to do next. And so you kind of start out figuring out how to invest in like the stock market and everything. And once you automate it all, it gets pretty boring. And I just feel like I needed something active to do. And so he actually, my ex-husband, was the one that got me started in real estate, which is very interesting. And so he was like, hey, I've always wanted to own rental properties. And then we got into it, and I learned that so much of it was the back end, like bookkeeping, finding tenants. You have tenants now, you have to screen them, you have to background check them.
The actual running of the business part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was super handy. And so I figured he would be most of the work and I would be, just supportive, and it ended up being really heavily me and then completely me by the end. And so we scaled up to 5 properties together in about 2 years, including our primary residence. And then we had our daughter. So I have a little girl who's 4, almost 5 in June. And so when she was about 3 months old, I found out that he had a drug addiction that I didn't know about, or I don't know if it started then, whatever it was. And it just ended up being a really bad scenario where I ended up kind of taking over all the property management and learning how to hire contractors and things because he just wouldn't show up on the job site. And I'd be like, well, we have plumbing problems. And I remember the first time meeting like an HVAC guy, and I'm like, I know nothing. I'm going to get scammed and they're going to tell me to buy a new furnace. And I met my first really nice guy that walked me through like I was an idiot because I didn't know anything about property. And I was like, okay, I can do this. This is a relationship business. And I love that part. To this day, that's my favorite part, is like working with contractors and handyman and technicians and learning who will educate you versus who is this woman walking onto the job site with Uggs on. And so you find the right people, and then you're like, okay, I can totally do this. And so it was actually really empowering at the time. Went through the whole divorce process, and then I bought my very first house, just me, when my daughter turned a year old.
Wow.
They gave me like a week and was like, what day this week do you want to close? And like her birthday, because I'll always remember that was my first,
I think I remember that. Yeah.
Me house. Yeah. And so that was in 2020, but we ended up having to sell all 5 properties we owned together, and I just started over completely. Okay. And it was really hard because I'm like, they kind of became my kids after a while, in addition to the baby that came with me, like in a carrier on the front to the different properties. You learn you could figure it out and you could problem solve. And that's that's kind of how it took off. And now it's an
Wow.
addiction. So,
Oh my gosh.
yeah.
I know. I get it. I mean, we joke that our rentals are better operated than our own home. They're in better condition than
Yeah.
our own home, because we always
Right.
put that first.
I had to
Assess as a-
stop sending appliances to my own house and then like transferring them to rentals because my husband now is like, all your houses have better things than ours. And like, be quiet. This house doesn't make us any money.
I know. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so where are you now? How many units do you have?
Yeah. So I'm at 16 right now. And I have 11 properties. And it's really cool because I essentially started at ground zero and rebuilt it.
Nice.
So you had to figure out a lot to scale up that quickly, but my friends kept telling me it's okay, you're starting out with experience this time. And at first I was like, yeah, that's just what you're telling me to make me feel better. But it really was true. And it kind of grew like crazy pretty quick.
Oh, wow. And so do you manage all 16 of those units?
You know those books that made you fall asleep in high school English class? They can also help you grow leadership skills you can use right now. My name is Hassan Sorrells, and I am the host of the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast. On this podcast, we read selections from great literature in the West and globally, and extract lessons from those books that can help your transformation to becoming a better leader today. Because reading and understanding great literature is better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Listen and subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all the major podcast players like this one, and tell all your colleagues in leadership. And thanks.
I do not. I started out when rates were really low buying long-term rentals and the market was a little more friendly. And I love long-term rentals. Like I still self-manage. I have 8 of those. And then I switched to midterm rentals when everything started to change and housing prices started to go up a lot, along with interest rates, just because I was really sick of working a W-2 job still and then feeling broke from real estate and sending all of my money. And so I really got into Airbnbs, midterm or medium term rentals for the cash flow because I do cash flow really well. And then about a year in, I was like, Uncle, I am one human being. And then I have property management for those now. So I have 8 that are furnished.
Long-term investors as well. And we have a studio in one of our sixplexes that we are converting to a midterm rental. And it's all done. It's ready to go. We're launching it in a couple weeks. And I'm a little nervous about it, I got to say.
Yeah.
I mean,
Congratulations.
I thank you. I know there are a lot more work and I'm here for it. I'm sure I can find a manager, here in California somewhere who can, help me out should I need it.
And it sounds really good if you have like one you're doing and you're like, okay, if I do midterms and people stay for 2 or 3 months, I'm maybe turning it 4 or 5 times a year.
Right.
My problem was I went from like 0 to 100 really quick, which is my toxic trait as a person. And once you have 8, you're like, holy cow, this is a lot of turnovers. So I think going slower would be my recommendation. Like you don't need to be totally insane like I did it.
I think our thing is that we have 2 studios that are in this sixplex, and we've also got 2 1-bedrooms and 2 2-bedrooms, and those lease out really well long term. But the studios have a lot of turnover anyway, so we're like, okay, if we can make more cash flow on them, let's give that a try. So I think that's kind of what we're at. Although the person who's in our other studio now just re-signed their lease, so we're good to go there for another year. Yay! So that's a relief. So we'll test it out.
And I started with 1-bedrooms too. Just because they were kind of the underperformers of your portfolio when you look over it. Yeah. And the other ones are just easy to lease. Like I always tell people, they need extra bedrooms, they need space, they need stuff to put their store things, bring all their dogs and
right.
Like
and so
long-term tenants are a whole different niche.
They really are. Yeah, they really are. And the thing is that for the studios, I know it seems kind of odd, but we're in Midtown Sacramento, which is the capital for California. And so we've got a lot of business professionals that come out and have to work for a project for 90 days or 6 months or something like that. So that's kind of what our market is. Not necessarily, although we are close to the hospitals. We don't allow pets in this complex, so that might
Yeah.
be a little bit of a hindrance for some nurses, because I know that a lot of them travel with pets. So
Right. And the nursing market has changed so much over the last like year and a half. It's so different than what it was during the pandemic. And so we do more business professionals, and also we do a lot of like contractor groups or individual guys that are coming into town. We have Amazon facilities, and Walmart is constantly building new Walmarts in our city.
Okay.
And so we'll house a lot of like working professionals, but
Okay.
more like very blue collar workers are our main niche. Just because like in our town specifically, we learned that nursing stipends were cut in half.
Right.
And so people were going to spend like $3,000 on a one bedroom or $2,500, and now they have more like $1,000 to spend, and it just didn't make sense when you're looking at the overhead costs of keeping good furniture and maintaining spaces with appliances and Keurigs and stocking them. That the nursing contracts ended up kind of not being where I thought I'd be.
Yeah.
And now we mostly do traveling professionals and contractors now.
I'm hoping it works out. So we'll check it out. We follow all kinds of people, and so we've learned quite a bit, and I take courses and do a lot of reading. So we'll see how that goes. So you prefer to manage long terms yourself. Am I getting that right?
Far. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But you love the cash flow that comes with the midterm rentals, right? And you don't do any short term anymore, right?
We'll short term out the gaps now that I have property managers. When it was just me, I'm like, I'm not doing that. That's way too many turnovers. Like turning it over after 3 days and coordinating cleaners and things, but they will sometimes short term rent the gaps.
Okay.
But we try to do a minimum of 4 days now, and it depends on the house. Like we have some houses that just always perform well on long-term contracts, and so we'll set a higher minimum day for that one to try to get.
So it's funny. We just had a conversation with our insurance guy because long story short, we lost our insurance, had to, go with a new company, and he facilitated that. And when I had to sign the contracts, it was checked off that there would be no short-term or leases under 1 year. So I had to get back a hold of my guy and find out and go, listen, that's not going to fly because we've got that going. He goes, no, it's fine. You just can't do like Airbnb short term. So basically, if we had decided to do any short-term rentals on those gaps, we would not be covered. So
interesting.
Anybody out there listening, these are things you need to know and think about.
And me and my insurance guy talk a lot. I think I have a benefit. So I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and so we just don't have many rules out here. We've had long conversations, and so far we haven't had any issues with our insurance. Me and my insurance guy are buddies. I'm like, someday that's probably going to change because insurance has just been an absolute bloodbath in the last year and a half.
It really has. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah. Especially with you guys, like where you're at. So is anyone near water?
Near water or near mountains where you're going to get any wildfires? Yeah. So we just lost the insurance also on one of our summer homes that we have in the mountains. So that's the next thing is we have till June to find a new one for that. So it's hard because it's all surrounded by trees, and then they want you to cut it back, and you're spending $10,000 to get a tree guy in there to trim it all back and clean it up, which is great. But it's like, should I spend $10,000 on the trees, or do I have $10,000 on the insurance?
Yeah. And you don't, I feel like when I started out, I didn't realize my biggest nemesis would be like trees and water. Which makes sense now, but you're just like, wow, water is such a problem and trees are such a problem. Like one year I spent like $5,000 on trees. So
really?
Which is not much, but
No, but it is though. I mean, when you're talking about things. So we saw that a few weeks ago, and that's kind of how we've gone back and forth with you on the gram. And we saw that a few weeks ago you had a pretty sizable problem with the plumbing in one of your midterm rentals going on. Why don't you explain to our listeners what happened and what you had to do to remedy all of that?
Yeah. So I have an up-down duplex. I bought it. This is my first really true midterm rental property I bought in Fort Wayne specifically. Okay. So this one's like near and dear to my heart. I think my property manager now hates it because it's just been the house of water problems. But buy the house with the tall ceilings and cool character, I guess is, it got me. But so you're going to sign up for issues potentially. And this house had a lot of problems. And so we did a very heavy cosmetic rehab. The tenant in the upstairs unit let her dog poop and chew everything up. And so it was like every surface needed touched both of them. And then lo and behold, you get it into this beautiful state, and then plumbing issue after plumbing issue happened. So for my most recent issue, it was actually the cast iron pipe that runs through the top and bottom units, like your main drain line that goes to the sewer and runs out of the building. Well, the useful life on a cast iron pipe is 100 years, and you're in a 120-year-old house. And so it would just literally was crumbling in the walls, and it was running into the basement.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was gross. It was a
really
gross one. But that is actually my third water leak in this property. So we have a long history of problems in this house.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that last one is one that probably would have put me over the edge. I'm not so sure about that. But we have had 3 floods now, one that wasn't so bad, one that was really, really bad and did 1/3 of the house. We had the water supply line to the toilet had broken and ran for like 3 days because the house was vacant. And unfortunately, we had just finished a remodel. We had the carpets went in the week before, and we had all new windows. We had painted everything. You know, all the trim was gorgeous. We were just getting ready to start putting it on the market after doing all the work. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
And I've actually replaced the ceiling twice now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's not fun. So this, you said, was an up-down unit. So is it 2 units, one on top of the other?
One on top of the other. So the bottom is a 2-bed, 1-bath, and the top is a 1-bed, 1-bath unit.
Okay. So you had 2 of your units that were affected by this. Okay. So that's even worse. Yeah. You were able to work through it pretty
Airbnb.
Oh.
Yeah. The first round of water leaks in this house, I was self-managing. And so the last 2 times, my property managers, it's been a them problem, and we just coordinate it. And it's one of those times, like, I'm so grateful I have people, and I know people now in the city. And I've spent the last like year and a half, my number one goal has just been like networking in the city I live in now, because I didn't grow up in Fort Wayne. I grew up like in the country. And so just this time was so much easier. Even though it was a much bigger problem, it was actually easier to solve because I knew everyone to call for once, and there's so much power in that.
We did an episode all about having what your different team members are. So the ones that are going to be in the field, and then also the ones that on the more professional level. So there was 2 podcasts there. We'll link them in the show notes for everybody. But I noticed when you post stuff on Instagram, you give a lot of credit to your team that work on all your projects with you.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about how you found them and explain to everyone why it is so important for you to have a team in place when owning rental properties?
Yeah. I get a lot of people asking, like, how do you do all this? You're one person, like you have kids and a day job, and do you not sleep? And I'm like, it's because of the people, because you are a person buying a bunch of property. And so you kind of have to figure that out. And so I like to always talk about the team because I want people to have very realistic expectations. Like, Sarah is not in there fixing plumbing lines. I'm not painting my own houses anymore. And so I always try to put that in there because I think people get this unrealistic view of you have to be handy and working on your own houses to make any money. And so I always like to include that to be like, full disclaimer, I'm a really good human manager, but I'm not there with the breaking cast iron pipes. The first key piece was really, the first calls were to my property manager. So it's 2 gentlemen. We worked together and we met each other. Man, I can't even remember how we met now. One of the guys and I went to high school together, which is a really weird scenario because I graduated with 86 people. So the fact that I knew someone else that was investing in real estate, I'm like, we have to meet and have coffee and see how we both ended up here.
Yeah.
And so he ended up helping me assemble bed frames one day, and we just talked about real estate, and that kind of led to them managing for me. So I met them, and so we sit down and we're like, okay, first of all, we have tenants in the bottom and the top, or the top was open at the time, but we had a long stay, like a 6-month stay coming in, and it was within a week. And we're like, yeah, and we're like, we have 1 week to figure this out, and it was such a bad problem. And I think it was
That's not a whole lot of time when it comes to plumbing, right?
Yeah. And especially that big of plumbing and then putting a ceiling back together, you know you're going to have to drywall, and drywall takes like multiple days of drying. And then you have to paint it. And so we had a lady in the bottom that books direct with us and knows Houston, like the guy I went to high school with. And so he's like, I'll talk to her. And the nice thing is they have their own property. So he's like, we can move her to one of ours temporarily. And then she can decide if she wants to stay in one of their other units, because they have enough they can do that now, which is lovely for me, because then I'm not stuck displacing a woman with nowhere to go. So we talked to her same day it happened. We're like, we're so sorry. We'll happily move you. Here are your options of what we have open. And then we'll go from there. And so we got her moved because we're like, this is a sewer line problem. We don't really want you here, but you don't want to start off the conversation with, hey, you know that water? It's sewer. So we just like quickly got her moved out, and she was happy. And then we're like, okay, we have 1 week and we don't want to move this 6-month booking. I don't want to lose that, especially because I'm really going to need that after fixing all of this plumbing. We didn't really know at the time how much was going to get pulled out and like how much drywall had to go. And we ended up pulling down the entire kitchen ceiling just to make it. It was honestly easier to pull down the whole thing and use full drywall sheets. Versus trying to like salvage and blend. So, but we had water like coming out of a light fixture.
That's nasty.
It was gross. And we're like, that's sewage. This is going great.
Oh God. And you're pregnant.
Of course. So I'm not going in there. But the guys went and took pictures and videos and things. And so we coordinated between a plumber, our contractor group that now we kind of all share, and we met over a Taco Tuesday, like lunch meeting. So several of us, like real estate investors, do tacos one Tuesday a month. And that's how I got to know this contractor group. And so if you ever have investor lunches in town, go to them, because it's totally worth it. And so that's how I know my general contractor that we use, our plumber that we use. Just like different people you can plug into different spots. Like, okay, Crystal's really good at drywall. Her husband's really good at framing. Like, we're going to put the pieces together, and we know each other. So that's how we were able to really pull off that quick timeline, where I think a lot of people, if we hadn't had that connection, they would have been like, I'm booked months out. Not like, I'll shuffle things around and make this happen for you.
And the whole thing is that for us, we very similar situation. I used to go to meetups all the time. And I would learn things, right? So they would have a lawyer that would come and speak about new laws that were coming into place or whatever. But then afterwards, you would meet, like we met our painter. And then our painter got us hooked up with our contractor. And our contractor got us hooked up with the electrician and the roofer and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, and that's just how it goes. And when you learn to trust one, and one knows how you want to operate your business and how you know, because some people want to do it on the cheap and some people want to do it completely on the straight and narrow. So you'll find out who's on your side with that really fast. So
And this is leak number 3. My first leak ever in this house was caused by just a bad handyman recommendation, where they said, oh, this guy, like, he can always like work you in quick. And I'm really impatient. That's my biggest problem. But I now learned you either better have a really good relationship or they're free for a reason. And so I'm kind of in the latter camp now, which I'm really proud of. But in the beginning, it was more, I was getting whoever had time on their schedule, which no one good should have time on their schedule, especially with the market how it is now. And so one of the leaks ended up being the tenant, when I was self-managing still, flushed a bunch of flushable wipes and tampons down the toilet, which is like, you know, and it normally wouldn't be a big deal, but so essentially it caused a water backup. So that bundle of goodness got caught in some tree roots when I was leaving the house, and it backed up the, you know, plumbing backwards. But then we learned that somewhere in the plumbing, they had added like a black corrugated pipe, but had drywalled over it. And so when the water backed up through the water lines, the corrugated pipe like did not do well. And so again, we had sewer like running into the basement of the house, because it was like this black, like expandable accordion looking pipe, and the water just like, it did not stay connected. Like, I think as long as it was going the proper direction, it was fine. But when it backed up, it leaked. It was like overflowing behind my washer and dryer.
Oh no.
It almost looked like a dishwasher. like
Yeah.
hose, but black. I'm like, I don't even, like, this is nothing that should be in the wall. And so that was my bad handyman recommendation slash normal tenant wear and tear. Like, I now like scope the sewers like twice a year at the house because I know it just has tree root problems, and people will, you kind of have to, and this will sound bad, like dummy proof your houses. Like, it's amazing what people will do no matter how many signs and things you put up. They will use flushable wipes. How do I prevent this from causing sewer water to back up into my basement?
Yeah. Well, you have to put it in the lease that if whatever ramifications come from them doing that. But I guess then you also have to prove that it was them if it's a 2-unit, right? So
yeah. So it's a 2-unit, and my problem was it was through Airbnb, and so they weren't on leases. So I'm used to the beautiful world of long-term tenants where I'm like, ma'am, you signed this paper saying you wouldn't use these, and we found them in your plumbing, and we get it scoped every once in a while, so I know it had to be during this period. And so, yeah, but you're kind of stuck, honestly, in that situation because, of course, the upstairs says it wasn't them, the downstairs says it wasn't them, and you're left, like, holding the bill.
Yeah,
so
of course. I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean,
right.
And you've talked before about tenant proofing, right? You want to talk a little bit about that? Tenant proofing, what you think that is?
Yeah. So I do a lot of different things in my units now, just from honestly learning the hard way. Like, I try to put up signs saying, like, don't flush anything, but now I know some houses have, like, older cast iron pipes that run from the house to the sewer line connection. I know roots are a problem at a couple of them, so we just regularly scope our properties, like, twice a year. We have a good guy that'll come out and do it for, like, $50, so...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's, like, an actual company, too. It's, like, they're rated on Google and everything.
Okay. Wow.
Invest in Indiana, everyone.
Oh my gosh. We have a single family that we are just put on the market, and we're going to scale up from it. And in a college town, and we bought it for our son to live in when he was in college with him and his roommates. Ended up being a great deal because his roommates paid rent, they paid for all the expenses, and we didn't have to pay for any living expenses for him. And now he's moved on, he's gone on with his life, and I really didn't want to rent to college kids, and it's not really in an area that's great for families to kind of go in. So we said, okay, fine, we'll sell it. Well, another investor came along, and she has asked us to scope all the sewer and then figure out if there's anything wrong, then we have to fix it. And I said to my realtor up there, I'm not going to do it. They want to do it, they can do it, but I get it. Like, she came in, she totally lowballed the offer, and she's asking for everything back and all this stuff. And I said, from an investor, I totally get it, but from a seller, too bad.
It's terrible.
So
I've literally told people, I'm like, you don't want me to buy anything from you because I'm going to say everything is too expensive, and I would like you to pay for everything. I would be a terrible buyer.
Yeah.
And I bought houses after telling someone that. So... Like, you don't want to sell to me. And they're like, no, we like you. We know you, whatever. And I'm like, okay, well,
all right.
I'm cheap.
There you go. I know, exactly. Well, and that's the name of the game, right? So I'm going to switch gears here and ask you a couple questions about your experience as an investor. Now, I know you're involved with Bigger Pockets, and you often attend their conferences and other networking events. Would you say that attending these events and meeting up with other like-minded investors lifts you up and kind of gives you confidence to keep investing?
Yeah. So I think it was never really the goal to have so many connections, but you just start attending people in this space who are putting out retreats that you follow on social media or putting out events. And it was really nice and almost kind of cathartic. I think that's really why, like, my Instagram started was first, like, watch me pay off debt because this sucks. And all of my friends think I've lost my mind because I'm, like, waitressing on the side of working my day job. And they're like, what is Sarah doing? She sold her nice car, and what is she driving now? And so I think it kind of grew into more, we all have similar problems. Like, it's fun when we were messaging back and forth, and you mentioned, like, termites or plumbing leaks, and I'm like, funny you mentioned that. Now I have termites and plumbing leaks. And so we all just have the same set of problems, and I think it helps normalize it because a lot of my friends are not dealing with plumbing leaks or running to rental properties in the evening, and I'm enjoying myself and think it's fun because this is what I am passionate about and enjoy doing. But it's really hard when you don't have anyone to talk to locally. And so I think that's really how I got involved in these networks. And you actually make good friends through this. And now I almost go to the bigger pockets for more of a social club. Like I think I might lobby con for future conferences, because I'm like, at this point, a lot of the education is focused on people in the beginning stages. And once you've kind of grown, there's not a lot of talks you get a ton out of, because you're like, I could phone a friend that could phone a friend that would find the answer for me if I needed it. And it's just the power of connection. Because in the beginning, when I didn't know anything about how to do real estate, and I'm like renovating my house hack, I would call like people from Instagram and be like, can I talk to you about like my furnace is frozen and I don't know why. And it's summer in Indiana and something's clearly wrong and I've angered it and I have no idea where to begin. And I know my usual HVAC guy will not go to this property. So it's a new person I'd have to find. And I'm worried he's just going to try to sell me a new furnace. Like, what do I need to know about this? And having those people it was everything. And so that's really why I got into it and kind of still am and do different retreats, because it's nice because you can actually help other people now, but then you have this group you can complain to about your eighth plumbing leak, and it feels cathartic.
It is.
So I have various support groups from different events I've done and good friends now that we can call each other anytime with issues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's nice to have your people, right? You got your tribe that you can kind of lean on and you can help, and it's helps with accountability as well, right? So I think there's that, because some of those like bigger pocket events and even some of those like masterminds, things like that I know we've done, they're pretty expensive. So for people out who don't have that kind of money, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so I'm perpetually cheap. So I'm actually kind of shocked that I ended up at like conferences and things by now. I think first just starting a social media account just to get to know people is very helpful. I didn't think in the beginning it would really evolve to this, but I'm like, I always grew it thinking I'd monetize it in some way, hence the podcast, and like make money through this.
Right.
And now I've realized I can save money and do cool things through Instagram just by having an account that people are aware of. And it's just networking. It's just messaging people. Like, I like that we can chat, or my other friends and I can chat online. And it's weird when you like have met them in person now, because I'm like, I have all these online friends all over.
I know.
My husband's like, how are you getting like Christmas cards from Salt Lake City? I'm like, oh, that's my friend who lives there. And you have all these online friends. But if you're just starting out, Instagram is free. Your DMs to people are free. You know, helping other people like do their podcasts, like you don't have to spend money on that. And honestly, that's really how I got my portfolio kind of going off the ground.
That's good. No,
so
we appreciate that.
Huge.
So I mean, it's funny because our kids will always say to us, and our kids are all in their 20s, I'll say, oh, my friend from Instagram, or, you know, whatever. And they're like, they're not your friends. Like, they're just people that are on there. I'm like, no. Like, we actually talk. Like, we know each other. We
actually talk.
So
I know about their kids. We have regular calls. Like,
exactly.
You can really build connections. And it's interesting because you've already kind of carved out that you're like-minded. So when you meet in person, it doesn't feel weird. And most people are so authentic anyway, but figuring out who your people are is pretty interesting. I will say, like, if you're ever going to spend money, I think smaller retreats are better than conferences, just because conferences are kind of impersonal. I get a lot out of conferences because I go and see my friends and they're doing really cool things, and I get to hear about their boutique hotels and way more riveting things than what I'm doing in Indiana.
Talking about solely, aren't you?
Yeah. And then their other partner on the back end, like, I know her really well. Like, we chat a lot. So Deanna is awesome.
Yeah.
And we met at a retreat originally. So I actually met solely kind of the last out of everybody.
Oh, okay.
But Deanna and I are really good friends, and we have this like group chat with our friend Katie. And so we're constantly talking about problems, but she's an architect. And so she's just really cool to talk to about projects. And so is her husband. So they're a cool like power duo to know.
Yeah. We're talking about solely from lattes and leases, or lattes leases, or whatever it is. And she has just taken off and she's doing
She
really
has.
well. And yeah.
And she's
Kevin and I
incredibly
are really
smart.
happy
And I
with her.
think what I appreciate about her is she's much quieter in person. She doesn't drink. Like during Bigger Pockets, she's like, I'm going to go back to my hotel and watch Ugly Betty. And I'm like, this is my favorite. Like we're all secretly grandmas. And I think that's why we all became friends, and just such smart people you meet at these retreats. And you do put on some degree of like a facade with your social media because you have to be outgoing and push yourself. And it's cute to see her be like, I'm exhausted. This has been great. I'm going to bed. Humans that do require sleep.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that you see people on Instagram and you're thinking everybody has these big hotel suites, the penthouse suite, and they're getting on their private jet and then they're driving their Lamborghini. And, it's like, no, we drive a Honda and we're staying at the, Residence Inn.
So my friend Katie and I were left in charge of what car we got. And then it ended up being Katie. And she's just hilarious. Like, she is doing like improv stuff on the side right now. And so she's like, I'm going to get a minivan because Sully will hate it. And so we rented a big white minivan and would pick her up in it. And it was hilarious. And we enjoyed it a lot because, I mean, she's at the level where she knows people that do like lease or rent like a Porsche or something to drive up to these events. And we're like, we're going to go the opposite way and get a giant white van because we can all fit in it and it'll be great. And I was pregnant at the time. So I'm like, I can DD for everyone. This is a dream. We'll just throw all our friends in this giant van. And so it was a great time.
Oh, that's good.
That's kind of us.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. Well, okay. So you, like myself, have been through some pretty rough times, and mine was many, many years ago. And I'm happy to say that I am such a different person and a better person now because of what I had to go through back then. Do you have a mantra or any tips for those who might be overwhelmed and think that maybe investing is too much work for them right now?
Yeah. So I always keep this like phrase up on my computer screen. So it's my background. If I could like screen share my screen, it would show up. Where I had one that was like, go be who you're always meant to be. Just because I felt like I made myself, like I remember feeling like I couldn't ever tell my ex-husband every little thing I was doing because it was so overwhelming. Because I have 80,000 irons in the fire, and rental properties are like pouring gasoline on that because things break every day.
Right.
And the more you get, the more stuff breaks and the more people you need. I just remember I wasn't like showing up who I wanted to be. And I always felt like I should be doing more with life and, enjoying things more. And it was just challenging. And then it got harder and harder, obviously, by the end. But yeah, I think leaning into that and just showing up as your whole self. And I kind of made peace for a bit that I would be like alone with cats by the end. And then I met my husband. So things come out of nowhere. But I was like, I just feel like I'm going to overwhelm guys that are, trying to date you. And you're like, let me tell you the 37 things I have on my agenda today. And they're going to be like, whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, you're insane. I'm like, yes. That is me as a package. And so it's just really cool to be able to be myself completely with my husband and know that is out there. So I just feel really fortunate to have like gone through that. But it wasn't always easy, obviously. Like I always thought it was kind of funny because I'm not very emotional, and I would cry every single day for months. Like I started tallying, like she's gone 0 days without crying, like kind of like the workforce reports where they're like, we've gone 0 days without incident. It was like, I just want to go 1 day without crying. Yeah. And that was very unlike me. And so I did a lot of life coaches, I did therapy, I did kind of all the things. I got on like anxiety medication. I definitely had some, depression going through the divorce. And so I've just always been very open about, getting help for your mental health and kind of getting yourself in order so you show up for your people in a way that you want to be. And it was just kind of figuring out, I'm like the person that I always like truly believe I am in my head, like let's go be her all the time. And just kind of realizing that if people aren't comfortable with that, then they don't need to be around your circle and kind of taking up that energy. And so a lot was just figuring out who your true people were. At the time, going into real estate, I had gone from a 2-income house to a 1-income house. And I was really scared about that idea because I'm like, what if I lose my job tomorrow? it was the pandemic and I just needed financial security. Like money's a big thing for me. And so just having, and not like, oh, I'm obsessed with money or anything, but it's more like, if I was to get fired tomorrow, I need to support this child and I needed to have a runway to do so. And real estate was my way to figure that out.
Completely understand that. Yeah. Completely understand that. I had three boys as a single mom. Yeah. And it was a lot. And I had a lot of support. I'm going to admit that I had a lot of support, but you know, one of some of the best, my aunt, and she was kind of a mentor to me. And she would say to me, Stacy, you have to get your house in order. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And basically it was just, you know, get your shit together, get your life, and start prioritizing what's important in life and what's not important in life, and let those go. As I look back on it now, you know, now I'm trying to kind of refocus on that a little too, because, you know, we started Your Landlord Resource. We didn't have to. We just thought, oh, let's just, you know, try to help other, you know, newbie landlords out there try to find their way and run their business and stuff. And to be honest with you, it's not a huge moneymaker for us. So, but
it's fun.
And that's what it is. And we're here to help people and stuff. But it's important that when life gets overwhelming, even now, that I know how to step back and say, nope, enough is enough. I've got to prioritize myself, my health, my family even. So just being able to be firm with yourself and knowing yourself, I think is huge, which I know you have learned that as I have. So.
And I've been slowly trying to work on that, because I'm like, now that so me and my husband got married almost a year ago. And so I had made myself extremely busy through divorce and a single mom life and just trying to build out financial security. But then you also make yourself just incredibly busy where you have no time to also just like enjoy things.
Right.
Or like my husband's just like, sit down and watch one TV show, like watch one. And so this winter we watched, like I've never binge watched really anything unless I was in college, and I think it was Friends. And so we sat down and watched like Stranger Things and Game of Thrones, and I'm like, I'm just wasting my time. But it was like I just needed to slow down a little bit and find what pace was sustainable, because I'm like, I'm just going to be the busy person that never sees their kids if I keep up at this extraordinary rate. Not that I need to watch every TV series with everyone, but it's just a little bit where we get quality time together. And I think that's huge. We're both quality time people. And so for the last,
and that's important for your relationship as well.
Yeah. It's just been like, figure out what I can hire out so I can slow down. And so it's been really interesting. So now I have like an assistant that helps me with like bookkeeping. I have a bookkeeper, a CPA, kind of like, I don't mow my own lawn. I don't, there's a lot of things I don't know. I have a house cleaner, just trying to figure out, you know, and setting like a minimum dollar amount of like, okay, what task is worth $50 an hour or $100 an hour, and get rid of all of those. Like if it's not making me happy and it's not building connection with my husband or my child, it needs to go. And being okay with like, I'm pretty spendy, but now I get to go on walks at night instead of running around to houses most of the time, unless I just am in a project and enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's
that's
been
huge.
interesting to speed up and then slow down. So.
Yeah, no, I know. And slowing down is, I think it's hard for people like us who are motivated, right? I mean, like, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't really need the money. And so anything that comes from Your Landlord Resource, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, you can just maybe put that towards an investment or something like that. But it's hard because once you start something, I'm a person that wants to see it through and finish it, right? But there's been a couple times where I've got my foot out the door and I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't fun anymore, right? So
I had to pivot what I thought I was doing with like podcasts and social media, because it's very thankless. Like I would spend $1,000 and make $500. Then I'm like, the next year I'd spend $3,000 and make $1,000. And people are like, you made $3,000 between your podcast and social media. And it was like year 3. I'm like, yeah, but I spent $5,000. Like I'm not getting any better at this. I'm just really good at paying people, and you can get the revenue up. And then I decided, what if I just totally scrap all of it and use it for just like awareness, because now I get asked to do cool podcasts like this. I asked to like host a networking event for money nerds at Bigger Pockets, just from getting to know people. And I'm like, this is super fun and kind of fulfilling a different box than I thought it would. And then also I pivoted to just using this platform to raise private money, where people get to watch me do things that are fun and like get dirty sometimes, and then talk about my team other times, but get to see like that I'm kind of like CEOing my portfolio now versus actually working on it day to day. And so I pivoted to like, if I raise private capital from one person on Instagram this year, it was worth the time I put in. And that seemed much happier to me than constantly pushing out like evergreen content 3 times a week, because that's what they say to do. And how many reels do you do and things, but my growth is completely flat right now, but I'm happier and I enjoy it. So
there's that, right? It's all about being happy. And I think some people forget that. I think some people are just so focused, they forget to be what makes them happy. So you have a couple of links that are on your Instagram account. We'll put them in the show notes. Do you want to explain to people what those are for?
Yeah, so I keep a list of people who are interested in private money, and that can be either if you would like to be a lender and actually buy a property with me. So passive lending, where essentially you're interested in real estate but have no time but have money. I love this stuff, so I'm like in deep every day, and so I can essentially help other people buy real estate and then get a set return every month. And so that's on there. It's also good because I'll do like email blasts and like private money slide decks, and you can come watch me like pitch to other people when I have a new investment, and just like learn how to do it yourself. If you're like, I don't know how to raise private money, it'd be cool if I could watch someone else do it. Come on over, join the list. You don't have to lend. You can just hang out and watch.
All right.
I don't do it a ton, but when we do it, everybody's welcome, and like, please bring questions. And then the other things I have, I think on there right now are just I do have furnishing checklist on there, and then I think that's probably the second link. So, and then I keep a running list of, if I someday mentor anyone or do like a mastermind or something, you can join that list. I always figured if I suddenly am laid off from my job, I'll start educating more. So
there you go. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We're almost done here. Always have to have a backup plan. A couple more quick questions. So what are 3 pieces of advice that you have for newbie rental property owners who want to self-manage their own properties?
I think finding someone on Instagram that's investing in honestly similar things to you and asking them for some of their resources. I use avail.co still for all of my like electronic leases, auto payments. I guess the first thing is you need a real lease. There's lots of websites you can go to get it. Second of all, do your tenant screening very well.
Yeah,
if someone walks in and tells you I have a pile of cash, that's a red flag. Yeah. And then give yourself some patience to get started, because we're all kind of learning. And so really lean on other people, even if a lot of us are on Instagram because you genuinely want to help people. So don't be afraid to ask. Because I think just knowing anyone that can help you and support you through the screening, choosing an applicant, because really it's all who you put in your properties, and it's by far the most labor intensive part there is just finding good people. And it will make or break your life for the next potential years ahead. And so definitely ask for help during that phase is important.
So Kevin and I have a course that we're working on right now. It's called From Marketing to Move In. And basically it starts all the way from fair housing and how to set up your ad and market your property, all the way through pre-screening, vetting the tenant, showing the unit, getting the unit ready, and then moving the tenant in and what they need to know and all that kind of stuff. And we're hoping that this is something that people can learn from. It's the most important for us. It's the most important part, because that person who's living in there is going to make everything great, or it's going to make your life hell. And so you really want to be picky about who you're putting in there.
Right. Yeah. As you're saying that, I remember so many, there's just so many flashbacks of like things you didn't do well in the beginning. And I remember early on, everyone, the first thing they ask is, when can I see a property? And it's kind of like meeting contractors for the first time where, you know, you'll say yes to 10 people seeing it and 2 will show up or vice versa. And it's a huge time suck. It's a huge loss of your time. And so now it is rare that I show a house to more than 2 people.
Right.
Because I've talked to them, I've done a pre-screen on them, I've asked all my questions, we've background checked all the parts and pieces, and actually seeing the property should be very last. And a lot of people like want to put it first. Or like, why would I, you know, pay an application fee or pay for a background check if I have never even seen the house? And I'm like, because it will save you tons of time. I remember the first time I ever put out a rental application, I got like 100 people replying and I had no idea what to do. And I'm like, I have over 100 people that want to walk through this property, and that's the first thing they ask. And so just being prepared for that, I think, is a shock every time. Sometimes how many people will find you and beg to walk through the house before you really know anything about them.
Yeah. So. I mean, it's huge. We do the pre-screening, and then Kevin is pretty handy with the photos and photography and videos. So he does a video walkthrough to music and makes it all nice and everything. And we will forward that on to people before, just to make sure, so they can at least get in. It looks like they're kind of getting in the space. And we've got it's called a Matterport, where it does a 360-degree view. So we'll put all that up to try to let people see as much as they possibly can. Then if they're still interested, then we'll move forward from there. All right. I know you got to get going here. One more question, though. You're a reader like we are. What is one book that you recommend that our listeners read?
So I'm still a diehard money nerd. That's kind of my background. I enjoy reading articles about the economy and personal finance. So my favorite book of all time is called The Simple Path to Wealth. And I think it teaches you really how to invest in the stock market, and it makes it really not scary. The cover of the book looks extremely boring, but the guy wrote it for his daughter who was 0% interested in finance. And so he tries to make it funny and witty, and it is hilarious, I think. But I'm kind of a money nerd. And then he's like, in the end, she didn't really care about the book, so I published it for all of you guys, which I just think is really cute because it's like every parent's struggle. For sure. And so it's by J.L. Collins. It's great. And I think it's a good background because at some point, as a real estate investor, you grow so much that you start looking into other ways to kind of shuffle around money. And so I'm starting to see a lot of my investor friends, which is really cool, who used to care 0% about 401ks and stuff, be like, okay, my CPA is saying I have X amount of money, like, that I'm going to get taxed on. What are ways I can protect and like kind of shelter away some money? And there's self-directed 401ks and IRAs and all these really cool things as someone who's, you know, self-employed only can do. And it's just a really nice alternative if you're like, hey, my exposure is 100% real estate. You know, it's a nice dip the toe in the water to be like, okay, maybe investing isn't that scary. So
it's always good to dive. It's always good to
is The Simple Path to Wealth.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I hadn't read that one, but like I said, I have kids in their 20s, so it's, you know, probably a good one. Maybe I'll check it out and then hand it off to them. But, you know, one of our guys is getting ready to buy his first rental. So we're really excited
between
about
Rich Dad, Poor Dad and that.
Yeah.
So
they all got Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I try to make all of my friends read it.
Yeah. Right. So we gave them all for Christmas. Every year they get a book, either self-help or a business book or something. We did Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So maybe this year we'll work on that. But it's always good to diversify, right? Like you don't want everything in rental properties or everything in stocks, right? So when one goes, you it's nice to have a good balance on stuff. So that's a good one. So thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on today. You have been a wealth of knowledge and inspiring for all of our landlords, and it's probably nice that they get to hear a different voice than just me and Kevin. So nice to have a little change there.
We like you guys, though. It's fun.
We enjoy it. We have fun together, and that's part of it. That's the major part of it, right? Well, I know you have a doctor appointment you need to get to for your baby. So go get it all checked and make sure everything's going well. And we cannot wait. Yeah. Right?
Yes. For the announcement and all the things. So
I know.
We're really excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you know what you're having?
We're having a baby boy. So we'll have a girl and a boy. And then I'm done.
And then with that, yeah, we kept going. We were trying to get that girl. It didn't happen. We ended up with 3 boys, but
3 boys.
yeah, that's
our
right.
dream is to travel, and we're like, hotels and everything's going to be made for 4. And so we think for travel, at least if one of us can triage a child at a time, that may help, because it would be.
You are exactly right on that. So when we go now, we would always have to get a room for us and then a room for the kids. This is obviously when they're older.
Yeah.
When we would go to Disneyland, it was always kind of a pain because there was always that one little one. And I mean, it was just like, you're good. Stop at 2. Stop at 2.
Yeah. And then I'm like, now that I said this, we're going to have like twins or something. But so the first ultrasound, I'm like, oh, thank God there's one baby. We really just wanted 2.
Yeah,
but
no.
I see people with these huge families, and it's amazing what they have. And I'm like, I lack the patience. So
Yeah, no, I have
very proud
friends
of all parents who can do more than that.
Right? I mean, I have friends with 6 kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, no way. So
my property manager has 8. One of the guys has no kids. The other one has 8 children. I'm like, your wife is a saint.
Yes.
Please tell her we mean it when we say that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Wow. All right. Well, it was wonderful talking to you today. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, and you take care.
Thank you. You too.
Wow. Just wow. You know, Sarah and I have gone back and forth for years on social media, and I'm so impressed with how she has grown and developed herself personally and professionally. We hope you all enjoyed listening to what she had to say today. We are working on future episodes where we can get some other landlords on here to tell their stories and inspire you in your rental property business mindset, much like Sarah has done for us today. As I mentioned in the episode, we have an online or downloadable course that Kevin and I are working on. It's called From Marketing to Move-In, and we'll cover step by step what you need to do to find and place your ideal tenant. Not ours, your ideal tenant. We will help you determine exactly what to look for in applicants to ensure that they will pay on time and love and respect your property while living there. The course starts with marketing and how to write your ad, moves into pre-screening, showing the unit, and then the application process. Of course, we're going to work through the lease and discuss all the areas you must include in the body of the lease and several other items that you may not have considered. And finally, we walk you through the move-in process from preparing the unit, inspections, and what you can do to set your tenant up for success while living in your rental property. We are super excited to be finally getting this course completed. If you'd like to sign up and be on the waiting list and maybe even be part of our beta group, we will link it in the show notes for you to check out. And of course, we're going to include links to our free weekly newsletter, our free downloadable forms that we offer, and our private Facebook group, as well as our social media sites. Again, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to all that we, and today Sarah, had to say. We appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, you've got this, landlords.